Hey Internet, Mad Christian Monday, Trinity 16 Historic Lectionary Prep. You know the hardest thing about trying to talk to you one-year lectionary guys is I know you already know way more than I do about this because you do it every year, but that means that you know what I'm about to say, which is that you have a marvelously crafted little text sandwich for this Trinity 16 in which you have two stories, old and new, about the same reality that comes together in Jesus Christ. And we see Jesus himself doing it in the gospel reading, but it is by his power that it happens in the Old Testament reading. And then in the middle, you got this epistle, which is encouraging us to believe that the God that we have can do much more than we ask or imagine, and that's after we've seen it happen twice and are letting it be known then that the resurrection is in Jesus himself. Now, this reminds me of a question I heard this week on Twitter about typology, and I know some of you one-year guys aren't such big fans of typology, but I don't know how you ignore it right here. Jesus is the fulfillment of what Elijah only is a shadow of. So the story starts in 1 Kings chapter 17 when Elijah, during the famine, when he had run away from Jezebel and Ahab, he is staying with this widow. The oil does not run out. The flour does not run out. What a great story. I mean, my hook would be the battle of the prophets, the whole fight about fire coming out of heaven, and then his fleeing. He goes past the mountain. You got the small voice, which is not your heart, but is God speaking outside of your heart and against what you would want to see, and the fire and the power and the glory. And he's saying, by the way, what you're going to do is you're going to trust in my word and you're going to die. And he goes from there. I believe he fulfills what he had been asked to do, but he ends up staying with this widow, right? And the oil doesn't run out, all this stuff. But then her son dies. Oh my goodness. And she's like, why did you come here? Like, we were going to die together by starving, and now you just gave me hope, and now he's dead, and why are you here, man of God? And you have this marvelous thing. I mean, how does he know this is what's supposed to happen? But he says, give me your son. Give me your son. How much is that the Father saying to you, right? You're mine. You're mine. Here you are, afraid of life, struggling, failing. And God looks and says, hey, you're mine. Give me your son. I'll do what needs to be done. And he takes him up to the upper chamber. And I can't help but hear a little echo of something that happened in an upper room on the night when Jesus was betrayed. Do you remember this, right? It was in the upper chamber that the unimaginable thing, more than we could ask, was instituted for our salvation once and for all. It is, in fact, his death and resurrection. It is, in fact, his crucifixion, only given for faith, to strengthen faith over against the way we would see things be. So in that upper chamber, he stretches himself out upon the child. He makes his body one with the child's body. Now, I'm not talking inappropriately here. I'm talking shadow and fulfillment. What does Jesus do as he hands with his own hand himself to you and to I, and really to those apostles in that upper room, but binds himself and his faith, his trust, his ability to raise to us? That's pretty cool stuff here. The Lord listened to him. What does Jesus do before he consecrates the supper, right? He lifts his eyes to heaven and he says to him, thank you. Right? The Lord hears that prayer, that giving of thanks. He hears the voice of Jesus more than the voice of Elijah, but Elijah here is a great example, and the result is the life of the child comes in to him again. Resurrection is the result of God's word when he says, be raised. Now, again, Ephesians is this nice little sandwich. It's the meat here, I think, between these two. I mean, they're all meat. We're going to come back to that, though. And let's look at the fulfillment, right? You had the shadow. Now you got the substance in Jesus. And can this story preach? It's a battle between light and darkness. Would you start with where is named? That's a fun thing to do for people. Try to draw the map in their heads, help them have some understanding of what the world they're trying to see or envision is and how it hangs together and where Jesus was going at this point, particularly in Luke's travel narrative, which you may be familiar with that. That's all there. But you can also just start with this little tiny town, and that there's a man who died, sounds familiar. Only son of a mother, sounds familiar. She is a widow, sounds familiar. So you got the overlap with Elijah, but I love this. A considerable crowd. See, Elijah and the widow, they're in this hidden place, right? They're in a tiny place, and it's just them that sees this happen. Here you have this huge crowd, and this huge crowd is surrounding the dead body. So you have this kind of army of death. Now, they're not like zombies or anything like that, right? But you got this group of grief, right? Army of grief walking out. And if you've seen ancient world funerals, they're wailing, they're making noise. It's all pain. And especially because they know this woman has no one to officially care for her. And I don't care what you say about gender fluidity. In the ancient world, if you were an old woman by yourself, you needed some help. You didn't have pepper spray. That wasn't there. So having that guy was pretty important. Army of grief, army of darkness, hordes of death walking out of this town, and there's Jesus. And Jesus has a pretty big crowd with him as well. It said that earlier in the text, right? So here is the army of light, the army of hope, the army of salvation, the army of trust and belief that the one who brings God's eternity is here in our midst, and he confronts, right? These two armies come together and they face off against each other, the body of death and Jesus himself. Oh, and the Lord had compassion. You could just spend an hour on how when God does what God does, it is not justice. It is mercy. It is to give and to give and to give. And he says, weep not. Weep not. Let me wipe every tear from your eyes. The prophet said that I would. And then he does something radical. Absolutely radical. He touches the coffin. Now, I probably overuse this when I preach, but it's so good. It's so true. It happens. I stumbled on it myself with the leper who asked Jesus to heal him, and if you will, be clean. And before Jesus says, I will be clean, he touches the leper's face. And I've heard guys preach about how that must have been amazing, because the leper would have never been touched before, and the human element of the story is so amazing. Well, that probably is true, but it's not really why we're supposed to marvel at what a human deft touch Jesus had. The thing to acknowledge is that in the culture in which they were living, right, Second Temple Judaism, in which this guy is making claims to be the Messiah, when he just touched the leper, he can't be the Messiah anymore. He's unclean for the rest of his life. There's no way through this. You can kind of go to the temple and maybe, but no, he's unclean now. That was he just gave it all up. It's radical what he does. It's worse than not washing your hands when you eat. It's worse than letting your disciples eat some grain on the Sabbath. This is ridiculous what he does. It's so unpharisaical, not because he's being nice, but because he's touching the uncleanness. And then the real miracle happens, that the unclean can't unclean Jesus. When you touch something filthy, the dirt rubs off on you. When Jesus touches something dirty, the clean rubs off on the dirt. And the dirt gets clean. And he does it here too. He should not. Touching this casket, no, you don't do this. This is this is not the codes, right? To touch a dead body is to become unclean. You now no longer can do all the stuff you're supposed to do as a Jew. When your family dies, you have to deal with it, and you're outside the covenant in a sense for a little while. And yet Jesus is like, whatever. Touch it. Oh, wait. Does the dirt rub off on me, or do I rub off on the dirt? Let's find out. Hey, boy, get up. Sorry about that noise. Hey, boy, get up. I say to you, resurrect. Oh, man. And that indeed, every time you see this, right here, it means get up, sit up, stand up, get up, stand up for your, it means that, but not that. It means that, but it also means to resurrect. And it's a double entendre, and it is when God has compassion, over here, it is what he does. He says, resurrect. And so it is what he says to you today, and it is what he will say to you on the last day, and it will happen. The dead man will always rise when Jesus says so, and he gives him to his mother. He wants to restore the unity of the human family. It's so awesome. Nobody gets it. They don't get it. Oh, he's a prophet just like Elijah. Isn't that marvelous? But God has visited. They do say that, but they don't mean him. They should, but they don't. But they do. There it is. They know and they don't know all at the same time, and the report continues to spread, yada, yada. It's still pretty early in the book, right? No one's turned on him too much yet, but now Paul's going to say to us, This is our hope, right? Why would you lose heart in our present age? The other videos, there's a lot of this. Like, the challenge of the present age is so imposing upon us. It's easy to kind of have your heart fail. But, I mean, Paul's in jail when he's writing this thing, right? He says, don't lose heart. I'll shrug it off. How am I going to shrug it off? I'm going to shrug it off because I'm going to rise from the dead. That's how. Not worried about it. What do you think this life is it? And Christian? Present day, 21st century Christian, I know you do. I do too. We live thinking this life is it, but this is our faith. This life's not it. We want to impact this world. We got to start believing this life's not it. The way we impact this world is know that we're not of the world. The other world's coming. We're waiting for it. Kill me. Fine. I'll get there sooner. Right? That is how you don't lose heart. I'm not saying you're going to magically do that tomorrow, but we got to start talking about it, don't we? And Paul does. Don't lose heart. I'm giving thanks right now, even though I'm in jail, to the Father, who, by the way, is the head of the house, because he's a reflection of God the Father. And, well, that headship is a matter that God built into creation. And it's a deeper topic. 1 Corinthians 11, verses 1 to 3. Is that right? 1 to 4 has something to do with that. Ephesians 5, obviously. And sadly, many people just don't get it these days. I don't get it. Pastors, when you don't get it, I don't get how you don't get it. It's so clear in the scriptures. Here it is. Again, I'm not going to dig into it too much, but it is worth touching on in your sermon to encourage people to remember not only that the trans issues of the present are a thing, but they're the fruit of a very long vine. And that vine, it's alive and well in our churches, because we won't talk about it. Yeah, and we maybe should when the text shows up. So, here's the thing, though. He's giving thanks because the riches of God's glory, compassion, has strengthened with power through his Spirit the inner being, so that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith. Notice this. Riches, God's mercy, glory, his action to strengthen you. These all sound real good, right? Everybody wants the Holy Spirit. Everybody wants to be strong of heart. Everyone wants to have Christ dwell in them. How? Through faith alone. And that means you don't see your young man rise from the dead right now. It means you see him stay dead, baptized and promised that God will say, give me your son on the last day. I'll wake him up for you. But right now, all the eye beholds is water as we pour it. Before the eye of faith unfolds the power of Jesus' merit, rooted and grounded in that, the love of Jesus, right? He's not talking about rooted and grounded in your love. Don't go there. I know you're a liberal. You want to. We all are. Oh, it's so nice. Love is my religion, right? And all that kind of stuff. No, don't go there. You're rooted and grounded in the love of God, the compassion he has for you. That he's not leaving you dead, but he's giving you these promises. And in that, knowing what he has for you, now you have strength to comprehend. There it is. Whose love? The love of Christ, which surpasses knowledge. Now, this is not to say that we don't have knowledge or need knowledge, and this is not to say that the love of Christ in my heart is a wonderful, fuzzy feeling. This is to say that we will never comprehend why God chose us even though we're his enemies. That we cannot fathom a God who gives and gives even to those who give nothing in such a way to make them givers again. We cannot understand the God of mercy, not of sacrifice, not fallen as we are, but we can believe that he's there. So he surpasses our knowledge in this, in his desire to save us above all other things. And that knowledge of him doing that in Jesus is the filling of us with God himself, namely Jesus, right? Jesus dwelling in us by this faith because, well, again, we don't understand it, but because he loves us, and that's why he'll do more than we could even think of or imagine. That's the power that does work in us. That's why we believe it all. Having even a little bit of faith is the proof positive that this is in you. So, don't lose heart. Yeah? Hold on to it. Like, understand it. Write it down. Make it something you can remind yourself with. That the power within us is going to bring you all the way to the last day where, again, the Lord having compassion on you will say, get up, boy. Yeah. Let's get this eternity thing going. Hope you've enjoyed this and helps you out getting ready for preaching this weekend or listening. Remember to like, subscribe, share, and support on Patreon. If you do not yet have a copy of, I always do it backwards, of Echo, you might consider getting it. It's great for helping with your confirmation prep. That's what it was built for, is to come out that catechism from another angle. Help your kids think about it. I know how hard it is to teach them on the late evenings and afternoons and how little joy they find in the process. This won't fix all of that, but it might wake them up for 1 year. So consider that as well. I don't recommend having them read it per se. You should read it and make use of it on your own. All right, cool. We will catch you all on the flip side. Till next time.